Time, again, being a very important commodity, incredibly important. I mentioned that earlier. Time, in a post-religious, post-meaning society, it's the closest thing we have to a deity. It's true because it's the only thing that's omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent. It's omniscient because everything that happens within time, so it must know about it. Also, that expression, only time will tell, that means that time knows something and it's not telling you until later. It's omnipresent because sooner or later you'll realize that the very infrastructure of our language is infected with temporal terms. Even right now I'm talking in terms of time, so we can't even communicate with that. You may not realize it now, but years from now you're gonna look back and be like, I didn't realize it at the time, but he was right about the time thing.
What you just heard there was not just the comedy of T.J. Miller, also the Mystery Science Theater-esque commentary on the comedy of T.J.
Right,
Miller.
exactly. I'm so happy. The last radio segment I did to promote this tour, they did a joke that I have about people taking pictures with me,
right,
and women being self-conscious about the way their arms look in pictures,
right.
And they cut it off before the punchline.
So it just made you look.
So it just was this setup where I look like a real. Can I curse on this program?
No, public radio.
I look like a real D-bag.
There you go.
Because they cut it off before the end of the joke, which is about how women are objectified so much. Can't we just leave the arms out of it? Can't women just all know that guys are not looking at their arms being like, she's looking good, except for those arms.
So you feel like we chose a pretty public radio
I think
clip.
you really chose, and also one of the more intellectual bits that I do, which, you know, that's what's strange about the show is that you'll come and with Nick Vatterott and Rhys Darby, you'll get a lot of mainstream observational stuff, and then it is the JFL alternative tour.
Right.
So you're going to get some off-kilter material as well, but it's a strange mix of sort of observational storytelling, but also philosophy and absurdism, and it really is kind of all things. And I'm excited because Canada tends to be audiences that are open for everything.
If you don't,
nice.
if T.J. Miller is he's here with me right now. You might know him from the show Silicon Valley. You might know him from the Emoji Movie. You might know him from the Gore Burger Show. You might know him from the Emoji Movie. You might know him from Deadpool and the Emoji Movie. T.J. Miller.
Yogi Bear 3D. Why haven't you mentioned that?
Hold on.
Yep. You're going to write it down to
Yogi
mention it later.
Bear
There it is.
3D. T.J. Miller is also set to appear in the upcoming Steven Spielberg project, Ready Player One. And
No, that's
Underwater
actually also
Pursuit.
called the Emoji Movie.
You changed the
It's
name.
Steven Spielberg, yeah. I spoke with him.
I knew he was
we
good.
talked about it. Ready Player One is the name of the book that it's based on. We liked the Emoji Movie. We liked to,
And in brackets?
I like doing films that have the word movie in them. Or 3D. Yogi Bear 3D.
Because it tells you what kind of movie it is.
It tells you
It's gonna
exactly
tell
what
you.
you're going to
Yeah.
see.
It's not going to be 2D, is it?
No.
No. Or 4D.
4D, can you imagine? That is Ready Player One is kind of 4D.
The tour that T.J. Miller's mentioning is the Just for Laughs alternative comedy tour. He's going to 12 Canadian cities. Kicks off tomorrow night in
JFL.
Ottawa. He'll be back in Toronto on Saturday with John Doerr. I want to play
Which I'm really excited about. He's one of my favorite comedians of all time, and I so rarely get to see him live.
Yeah.
So I'm actually more excited to see him than to see my own act.
Do you watch? Is he opening for you?
I mean, nobody's really opening for anyone on this tour because Rhys Darby, John Doerr, and Nick Vatterott are, they're headliners in their own right.
Right.
So you really do see kind of it's quite a bill of comedians. And that's what JFL does, is they sort of cull the best talent and present it in the best way. And so I'm excited about it. It's funny that it's the alternative tour, though, because it should be called the mainstream alternative tour.
I was going to ask, alternative to what?
I don't know. I guess a different tour. I think they're trying to say if you're coming to see this, then the comedy's going to be a little bit, left of center or strange or weird.
Does that put weird expectations on you?
No, not really, because I am very strange.
You think so?
So a lot of it, yeah, it's, again, mix of observational, philosophical, and car horn noises. Like,
oh, that's really good.
Yeah, well, wait till you see it live. Wait till you're not listening to PRI.
You mentioned you played Edmonton for 10 years?
Yeah,
so this isn't your first kind of jaunt in Canada.
I've been zip lining and riding roller coasters indoors in Edmonton since 2000 hoops.
I've been buying shoes and going on Ferris wheels.
I'm at the Sephora, then I'm watching a seal do tricks, then I'm at a PacSun beachwear place. Yeah, but I know Edmonton very well and know audiences there. Granted, I think I've been outside of the mall because there's a hotel in the mall. So when you perform at that club, you don't need to leave the mall. Mm-hmm. You live there, you eat there, you party there afterwards, you zip line there.
To your gig.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, God, that would be so wonderful. But so I kind of understand the Canadian sensibility and not just Vancouver or Toronto. And that's what's really exciting about this tour is I get to go to Hamilton and Ottawa.
And Red Deer.
Red Deer.
Have you ever been to Red Deer?
I have yet to be at Red Deer. And I haven't been to Calgary, and I've had a joke about it for, since I started working in Edmonton. And it is everyone in Canada makes fun of Edmonton. Everyone in Edmonton makes fun of Calgary. And everyone in Calgary is too drunk to care.
Pretty good.
What anybody has to say about them. But I have yet to tell that joke in Calgary, so I'm excited. I hope they're not too drunk to enjoy that particular piece of material.
Is it fun for you to play outside of big cities, outside of just Toronto and Vancouver?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And especially because we do Deadpool in Vancouver. I did Goon 2 in Toronto. Mm-hmm. And so I've done some film and television work, and then, of course, stand-up also in those bigger cities. But, I have yet to perform in Winnipeg, so I'm really excited about that. My favorite places to play in the United States are like Appleton, Wisconsin, Omaha, Nebraska. I think places where people, disregard how culturally, into it they are and how much they love comedy.
What do you mean? They disregard how culturally into it they are?
Well, I think it's probably different here, but in Omaha, Nebraska, everyone in Omaha is going, why don't more people come and play our city? As we were talking about the
secondary markets.
Certain artists are like, that's not a market that it's not a market at all. It's Omaha, Nebraska. It's Appleton, Wisconsin. And not only do they love and understand comedy, but they really appreciate that people are coming through their city. Because a lot of people don't do that. They'll just play Philadelphia, Boston, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Denver. That's the extent of what they're doing in the United States. And I've always actually found that Madison, Wisconsin is a better show than Brooklyn, New York, because in Brooklyn, let's see, we could be doing anything right now. Let's see what you're bringing to the table. Whereas, in Omaha, it's like that. They're making a night out of it.
How long does that get you? I mean, I've heard Chris Rock say that when he gets up on stage, he gets about 5 minutes for being Chris Rock, and then he has to start working.
This is a new thing that, and I'm glad that you bring it up because people have just started to ask me about that. I still don't understand, or I can't wrap my head around my celebrity, celebrity.
Let me explain what I'm talking about. So the idea being
I know you don't have to explain.
I'm trying to do for the people listening.
Oh, okay.
So the sorry.
Listen up, idiots.
the 5 when you go out on stage and you're very, very famous, the audience will give you the idea is that the audience will give you a break for 5 minutes, and then you got to start working.
Well, and even the way you explained it didn't make sense at all because they'll give you a break. I guess that means they walk out and get something to drink and go to the bathroom.
I meant they'll laugh at anything.
No, they really will give you the benefit of the doubt comedically. And Chris Rock sort of says that after 5 minutes, you better be funny. Otherwise, they're going to stop giving you a break. And, I think that people give me even less than that because in the United States, I sell cough syrup for a living. So I'm the talking voice of the booger from the Mucinex commercials. So I don't think anybody sees me as like, wow, that's that famous guy. If anything, they're like, all right, let's see what his stand-up is like within 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. And I think I establish very quickly, I even do a joke where I say, all right, I'll start with the traditional jokes that you guys can trust me. And then, I'll do that joke, which is radio appropriate. And it is, I think it's strange that you can say, well, you know what? I might be using it on the tour. So I'm actually not going to give that one away for free. But it's, I'll do a traditional joke. Like I have a prescription for marijuana in the United States. It's for anxiety, primarily anxiety about getting arrested for marijuana.
Right.
And that's sort of to say, like, I'm not just an actor who's here for some sort of cash grab. I actually left the show Silicon Valley, which is a popular show on HBO, to be able to do this interview right now because they've already started shooting. So if I was still on the show, I wouldn't be able to come to Canada and do this tour.
I wanted to talk about that for a second, not about Silicon Valley, but about stand-up, because you said something that really stuck with me one time. You said that you were thinking at some point about being a psychologist, and you realized that cough button.
I'm using the cough button.
You realize that if you were a psychologist, if you worked as hard as you possibly could, you could reach about 950, 1,000, 1,500 people and make
300,
them happy.
500. Did you just hear an interview that I did earlier today? Or you do your research?
We do our research.
You're no joke.
So
he's got the Q's on Q.
And you said that.
And I've got the A's.
Every night, you can reach 1,000, 1,500 people.
I'm purposefully making strong eye contact with the people in the booth.
Yeah.
And it's making them uncomfortable.
No, they're into it. They're into it.
No, I like it. I like the discomfort.
They want to know the answer to the question.
Well, yeah. I mean, listen, boy.
Do you not like talking about this?
No, I love it, but I find myself so boring.
I know.
When I do many, many interviews, I'm just so bored by myself and my own voice.
I'm super not bored.
Yeah, but let's say you're a psychologist. You can affect people's lives profoundly, but probably only 300 to 500 people. Ethically, I'm a utilitarian. So utilitarianism, sort of founded by, well, John Stuart Mill is the guy that I really like. But you make the most amount of people the most amount of happy, and those are sort of good choices. That's how you can contribute to the good in society. And so I did the math, and I realized that if I was a comedian, I could make people happy for about 12 minutes to an hour and a half, but millions of people. I mean, that's why I do Transformers 4, is that there's no way as a psychologist I can impact in a positive way people's day, in China. But when you do Transformers 4, you've got some people in China who see the film and then go to work and they're like, that guy with the curly hair said the dumbest things. And you can sort of lift them out of the tragedy that permeates everyday life, if only for an ephemeral amount of time, rather than in psychology where you can sort of change people's entire lives, but not that many people.
But was your guiding light
it's an altruistic endeavor.
But was your guiding light in stand-up always altruistic and always an altruistic endeavor, or did that change halfway through?
No, I mean, I think that's probably why I'm successful, is I have this work ethic that's driven by a mission statement and altruistic intentions. And so every day that other comedians, I think, are like, I don't feel like doing a show tonight, then it's about them, and then they're not going to work as hard. When it's wholly about other people and not about me, that's when you do the show either way, I mean, my wife and I were just on the phone, and she was sort of really, really upset about everything that's happening, in the world today, and the fact that we're not together, geographically. And, she knows how grueling the press is for this tour. But it again is me kind of, you got to get the job done. You have to, especially right now when I think a big part of my comedy is not sort of being preachy or getting into. I'm not going to talk about politics. I'm going to talk about the human condition.
Yeah.
And people want to step away from their screens for an hour or 2 hours in this case to see, several amazing comedians. And we're there to entertain, distract, and make you happy and laugh, not to kind of mire you in the stuff that you're already mired in. And I don't even know the meaning of the word mired.
I think it's something you muck and mire.
You can muck, you can mire, but don't spell it with a Y.
You mentioned that you don't talk about politics necessarily in your stand-up comedy. You talk about kind of greater things. And one thing I've noticed you've been talking a lot about recently is, and I know you get asked about this a fair bit, but is about nihilism.
Yeah, actually, most people don't ask about that because they can't imagine what the answer would be.
Well, what is the answer?
I think that we're sort of living in this post-religious, post-meaning society. And so the Nietzschean approach to this lack of meaning is to abolish all values, all idea of purpose. And that's actually really freeing, because once you realize there's no meaning to any of this, then you can make your own meaning. And that's what positive nihilism is it's just this idea that if nothing means anything, then anything can mean something. And so instead of people being, and that's not to go into politics, but that's why people are killing people right now, and why they're driving trucks into crowds or opening fire on because people have just lost any sense of purpose and meaning, and so they don't know what to do. And it's important for some cultural figureheads, not calling myself that, but just saying that there are certain cultural figureheads that need to kind of help condition people to understand that meaninglessness doesn't mean that this is all futile and terrible and horrible, and it actually is this freeing concept.
I feel like people go halfway. I don't know if you saw that Jim Carrey interview where he was interviewed, I think, on a red carpet for something for New York Fashion Week, and he said, how does it feel to be an icon?
Oh yeah, actually Nick Vatterott texted me and said he's stealing your bit.
But he was talking about how none of this really means anything, and we're all just polygons, we're all just shapes, and there was a great outcry online that perhaps he had just gone halfway. All he was talking about was that this is meaningless. He wasn't then talking about it's about where you find your own meaning.
Well, I don't know him at all, really. I've never met him. I've never worked with him.
He's on the phone right now.
Here he is. Let's put him on. Cough button. No, it's a. I could see that. I think he seems a little bit like a lost soul. I think he's a soul searcher. He's a searcher, and. It might have been nice for him to go, this is all meaningless, but there's a reason I'm here. Because that's what that statement does, is you're like, well, then why are you on television? Why are you at this red carpet thing?
Why get out of bed?
Yeah, why get out of bed? And the answer is, for whatever reason you want to. Get out of bed to work. Get out of bed to make other people feel happy. Get out of bed to support your family. Get out of bed to go to work because you find meaning in that work. And I think... he's one of those guys who can say this is all meaningless and not have to explain himself, whereas I am in a position where when I say I'm a nihilist, Conan O'Brien is like, okay, well, what does that mean then?
Yeah.
And there is meaning to it. It's that I decided to be a nihilist. I decided to be a comedian. But a nihilist will be equally appreciative of someone who's like, you know what? I like to go to work at 8, knock off at 5, get totally drunk the rest of the night, not do anything for anyone, and not be helpful in any way, shape, or form. I respect that. That's that person's decision. It isn't. And so what you do is you stop putting your value system on other people. And people get so scared when they stare the meaninglessness. This is what Nietzsche always says, is when you look into the abyss, most people just crumble. And the truth is that everyone has the capability to not crumble, to look into that abyss and say, well, this is a vast open space for me to create in. And we've also been given the tools to do that. Instagram means that everybody can be an artist and a photographer. Twitter means everybody can be a writer with an audience. We have all these social platforms, but a lot of people, instead of using them to express themselves or create their own meaning, they use them just to be really terrible to one another. And that's a big part of what's going on, south of here right now, is we're realizing that under the blanket of anonymity, or however you pronounce that.
Mm-hmm. You didn't think you got it.
Yeah, I think you've got it. They're kind of using that to act cowardly and act like children and be scared and be mean. And that's not what they should be doing. And so, I think just human beings right now are really trying to figure it out. And comedy for me, because actually, people, I call myself a nihilist because the only experience that people have with nihilism is usually the characters from Big Lebowski. Mm-hmm. And so it's important to kind of educate people on what that is and not make fun of it. But I'm actually an absurdist, which is nihilism with a smile. So it's sort of, you're like, this is all so ridiculous, but we may very well have much more fun if we laugh about it than if we kind of take ourselves seriously. That's another great thing about Canada, is I love that Canadians do not take themselves seriously. And it's probably why one of your main exports is comedy. Some of the best comedians in America are Canadian. And, you know, I've been joking about the fact that it's like you've been exporting comedy to us for so long that it's, you know, I'm here to kind of try and pay some of that back by, you know, going nationwide in Canada and kind of bringing the best of, I mean, Nick Vatterott is one of the best working comedians, and Rhys Darby is amazing, and the fact that I get to watch John Doerr is exciting to me. So, you know, I think that's a big part of it is like, that's why it's the alternative tours, because all of us are absurdists. We don't take ourselves seriously, and, you know, Canadians are similar. So they're going to enjoy it, I think.
T.J. Miller, thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure.
I know. I think I talk too much, so now I'd like to cough a little more.